Are you looking for an experience that will grow your teenagers' faith, increase their leadership skills, and teach them the discernment to engage with the world all around them, all while taking them on the adventure of a lifetime? I mean, who isn't looking for that? If your teenager loves fun, adventure, and wants to grow in their faith and leadership this summer, then send them to Excel's Summer Leadership Camp. Excel's Summer Leadership Camp is a 12-day experience for passionate young leaders looking to discover God's truth, to discern wisely, and live wholeheartedly. Your teenager will embark on a transformative journey in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where they'll build lasting friendships in the context of community, embark on thrilling adventures like camping, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, and they will receive expert training and certifications in categories like CPR and wilderness first aid. Each aspect of the camp is woven together to help them learn to discover truth, to discern wisely, and take godly action in the context of real-life situations. To learn more or begin an application, go to theexcelcamp.org. That's theexcelcamp.org. Hurry, because summer is just around the corner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Reclamation Podcast. I am so excited to bring you today's conversation with our featured guest, Brad Aycock. Brad is a friend of mine, and he serves as the development director of new church starts for the West Ohio Conference of the Methodist Church. Really long name, but what it means is that Brad creates new places for new faces. He's a serial spiritual entrepreneur, and if you've ever wrestled with the question, what is next to my faith walk, you are going to resonate with Brad's conversation so deeply. He shares his story going from civilian to someone who's in full-time ministry and eventually moving his family across the country to follow God's call. I mean, that's a big move. You're going to love it. He shares his heart. He shares what God's doing in West Ohio. And I think you'll resonate in a lot of levels, no matter where you are in your faith journey. I also want to say thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast, to share the podcast, and to tell people about it. It means so much to us. It means so much to me. We would not be where we are today with this little pet project of mine if it weren't for all that you do to share it. So if you know of anybody who needs to hear this conversation, I invite you to share it. And in the meantime, here's my conversation with Brad. Hey everybody, welcome to the Reclamation Podcast. I'm excited to bring you today's conversation with Brad Aycock. Brad, how the heck are you, man?
Hey, good morning. I'm good. Honored to be here.
Thanks. Now, Brad, you have a special role in our conference, and if you're not familiar with Methodism, the way it works is we've kind of got an overarching kind of connection, is what we call it, at the conference level. What is your title at the conference level? Kind of what do you do?
So the United Methodist Church is made up of conferences, which usually represent states. In larger states like Ohio, where there's a lot of Methodist churches, we have two conferences. And so Missouri, where I'm from, had one, so we had one bishop. Ohio has two, we have two bishops. Each conference usually has staff that shows priorities in the particular conference and context. My role is the director of new church development. I like to say kind of evangelism, right?
Right, you're like
reaching our community,
outward facing. How do we get the word out? What's that look like? So that has to come with a certain amount of pressure, given the reality that most of us know that the church predominantly in the United States is in decline in a lot of places. And so your job is to kind of come in and save the world.
Yeah, no pressure.
No, it's fine. It's fine. People do that all the time.
So, I mean, but I look at it as the greatest opportunity that we've ever had.
Yeah.
To give birth to something new, not just in the UMC, but church in general.
I love it.
Someone recently said they described the state of the church as being pregnant.
Pregnant.
And I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, not that we could totally relate to that, but you have pain, you have struggle sometimes, but.
Certainly I've been through pregnancy with my wife, and there's a lot of we can't relate. We can't. So let me ask you this: given the pressure and the nature of your job, and the fact that it's through the lens of faith, how would you describe your personal relationship with God?
I'm here today because of a new United Methodist Church. I was out of church for 15 years, and so grew up in a Baptist church till I was probably 12, small town Missouri. dropped out, just didn't really see value and purpose in it at that time. Started dating a girl who now is my wife.
It's always the girl that gets us there.
And she said, I want to take you to church with me after a month of dating. And I said, okay, what kind is it? And she said, it's United Methodist. I was like, in Southeast Missouri, you think South, you think Southern culture, Southern mindset, closer to Memphis, Tennessee is where we were. Not a lot of Methodist churches there.
Sure.
It's not a Methodist, it's more of a Baptist culture. And so didn't know a lot about the UMC because I hadn't seen a lot of UMC's, vibrant. And so I was like, sure, I'll go. I like you.
Yeah.
So I walked through the doors of that church, though, and I encountered God, truly encountered God like I'd never encountered God before.
Wow.
For the first time. And it was about a 10-year-old United Methodist church. It's now the largest Methodist church in Missouri. I had the privilege of the pastor, the planter, being my mentor, brought me on as a campus pastor, joined the staff there. And so it was just life-altering for me. That was in 1998, really October of 98.
Sure.
From that point forward, God started just doing some crazy things inside of me. And
so I think that's an interesting thought that we should chase down a little bit, because there are probably a lot of people listening who are in jobs that aren't in the church, who are in jobs that are just maybe they're entrepreneurs, maybe they're business leaders, maybe they're tons of military people who we know. How did you get from where you were, and maybe tell us where you were, to all of a sudden you're now a campus pastor? I mean, that feels like a big jump.
I had a couple of businesses there in Missouri. My brother and I had started an agriculture business, and we were very fortunate to be successful in that. And we were invited to do global work with other governments, and that was crazy enough. And so during that time is when I met Ann, took me to the church, started falling in love with Jesus more than ever. That business, the marketing business, really was taking off and growing. And so my faith was really taking off and growing. And so I started seeing it through the lens of, God has entrusted me with these 25 people that I was leading at the company.
Sure.
And so how can I be a good steward of my leadership? And so what could be a greater purpose for this particular business? And so I had the staff. We had a customer base of over 6,000 people nationally. And so kind of started shifting my focus on just, instead of building the pocketbook as the primary goal, just building relationships with people and getting to know them better. And so got really close with a lot of customers, with our staff, just trying to take care of them. Could always have done better if they're listening. They worked a lot of hours for us. I'm grateful.
So what does that look like? What's one practical thing that you can do to build a relationship with a customer or somebody on your team or whoever? Put some hands on it.
Great question. You always have to be careful in the corporate world with staff, right?
Right.
So we would just be very intentional about meals together, Thanksgiving meals together. People could offer to pray if they wanted, their option. Honoring family time. Just really, we had some people that have gone through struggles, rehab,
Sure.
and that type of thing. And so trying to be very supportive with that.
Did you guys have an intentional culture, like, did you name it, or did it just kind of happen out of love?
We came up with a mission statement.
Okay.
At some point. It said to glorify our Lord by being faithful stewards of all that has been entrusted to us, and to be a positive influence to all those we encounter.
Wow.
So it was kind of an internal, external. It wasn't perfect.
No.
That business, really, honestly, it grew so fast, we didn't know what to do in the beginning. And so it was just out of control. I said yes to everything. We did printing, we did marketing, consulting. We were everywhere, and it took its toll on some of
everything,
so,
right?
But for as far as our customers go, just spending a lot of one-on-one time, getting to know them. Worked with superintendents, worked with principals, worked with Fortune 500 companies. Really, just having that intentional presence of listening, working on that skill of listening. And so also understanding as my faith grew, becoming a disciple, I realized that, paid staff at a church, it's less than 1% of the world.
Yeah.
So when we talk about our beautiful mission statement to go and make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, we have to, my perspective expanded. It probably went from, the church is the hope of the world. We've got to go out together and serve. And that's true. That's one component. But really where the change happens is when CEOs or when salespeople or when teachers or when bankers or lawyers, when they personally invest in people that they serve, they lead, they manage, they have authority over maybe, or just work with. When you personally invest in people and not invoke your faith, but just when you let them see the values, let them see Jesus in you, that's really where the life change happens. I use David Taylor, the CEO of Procter & Gamble, as an example.
Yeah.
United Methodist here in Cincinnati Church. He's the CEO of one of the top 80 most innovative companies in the world, okay?
Of course he's United Methodist.
Of course he's United Methodist. We have a heart for that type of thing. So, but he is really, you can see a lot of his fruit of his faith utilized and lived out in his job there through the values of Procter & Gamble. I mean, he really has a clear vision for where he wants to see this company and this world go to. And so when we started spending more time with the church, the little small church, Bloomfield, Missouri.
Yeah, your plant, right? Your church plant?
No, this was
this was the actual church. Okay, got it.
This was a small town church in Bloomfield. I was lay leader there at some point, and started spending a lot more time at the church than we did at the business. Business was kind of running itself, or at least we were hoping it was.
Said every small business owner everywhere.
And so just started spending a lot of time, and pastor there, Susan Hoyle, was new, 2006 probably, and she came in and she invited me in to do a lot more of the things that I was able to do in the business. And that church started, thanks to a lot of faithful leaders, that church started growing. And so we started praying and visiting other churches and seeking wisdom from mentors. And my prayer and my wife's prayer was, God, place me where we can make the most impact for your kingdom.
So did you know at that point in time that you were called to the church to lead in the church?
Way.
No.
No way.
You were still like, I'm going to still have my business and be that, and then I can also serve the church and just live in both worlds and do it well.
Yeah, because I still feel like the impact happens
out there, right.
So I prayed then. I had growing business. We had our best year ever when we sold it. Didn't need to sell it, didn't have to sell it, wasn't looking to sell it. We had our best year of revenue that year. And
so why'd you sell it?
So we started praying, God, place me where I can make the most impact for your kingdom. Place us where we can make the most impact for your kingdom. That was our daily prayer. And we also did the Wesleyan Covenant prayer too. That was a dangerous prayer, right?
Yeah.
And so we would just pray that prayer every day and have open hands, and so be it. If it's in the corporate world, we're going to surrender that and accept that. And so it was Pastor Ron Watts, church planter of LaCroix that I mentioned in Cape Girardeau. We had been going to that service. They had a Saturday night service, 2 Sunday morning services, probably averaging 1,800 people at that point.
Wow, big church.
Probably 2,500 now.
Yeah.
And so we'd been going to Saturday night service and then going to Bloomfield on Sunday. That's probably a sign there that something's happening.
Yeah.
Like you're going to church. You love church that much, you're wanting to spend your Saturday night and Sunday morning several days a week. Maybe that's a sign. If you're listening out there and you're wondering if God's calling you into vocational ministry, if you love church that much where you're spending a lot of time there, you may need to. Now,
did Ann love church that much too, or did she just love you that much that she was going with you?
That's a good question. I'll ask her tonight. I'd say that she loved it too because we got involved in small groups. It was really a transformative.
And any kids at this point?
No. So going through the 2000s, we had the company. 2008, sold the business. Probably about 2006 is when I met with who eventually became my mentor in ministry, is Ron Watts. He was the planter of LaCroix. And just started talking through things with him. And so we're having a lunch one day, and he said, "Hey, come with an open mind today."
Uh-oh.
I didn't know what church plan. I didn't know anything about church planning or
That's like secret church language too. If you're listening and anyone ever tells you to come with an open mind, they're about to wreck your world.
I use it all the time, so don't be afraid. So he said, "Come with an open mind." And again, I didn't ever think of LaCroix as like it was 10 years old then, and so didn't really know the difference between a new church and an old church, and didn't have that perspective really at that point. I just knew that there were very few probably that were as large as LaCroix in our area, probably in the state. Ended up being in the whole state in Methodism. So he said, "You've started businesses, you're entrepreneurial. We'd like for you to consider joining our team." And so that was a big deal for us. And so it was like I use the example as it's like the little kid growing up in Kentucky and the Wildcats were growing, or Ohio State football, right?
Yeah,
but
sure.
A lot of Kentucky fans where I'm from, and so that was kind of the basketball was the king. And so so one thing led to another. We just started praying that God would open the doors. And so talked to my mentor, who also eventually ended up hiring me later, Jeff Posgate, family friend from a long time ago, pastor. He just gave me some things to pay attention to, and one thing led to another. Someone made us an offer on our business, and we spent 6 months just really discerning that, if that was God or if that was us.
Yeah, so tell me, what is that? Because I think there's probably somebody listening right now who's discerning God's voice in their life. And I think a lot of us get mixed up between God's voice and Chipotle, and that sort of thing happens, right? How would you say, if you're sitting in front of me and I'm like, "Brad, I think I got this life-changing decision," how do you know if it's God?
That's a great question. In 2008, 11 years later, there's probably some maturity with it. I would say when we were presented with the opportunity to come to West Ohio from Bishop Palmer, and we, first of all, you and I probably are both talented. We can probably manufacture opportunities, right?
Sure.
Probably didn't get to where we were in business and life without being able to make things happen at some point. So at that point, I didn't make that happen back then. I didn't make this happen here. It was not manufactured by me or family. It was like, oh, really?
Clearly something that you had no control over, or really no plan for.
Right.
So it felt as if God had thrown it in your lap.
Yes.
Good.
So I think that would be one thing that I would say is it coming from us, or is it coming from outside of us? So can you answer that? And then the second thing is, I learned, and just working in business and church, I always operate with a sense of urgency. I'm not advocating for that. If you're planting churches or even revitalizing churches, I'm evangelistic enough to let that drive my pace of we've got to do something. People need hope. And so being part of the last church that I served, First UMC in Sikeston, where we had explosive growth, started a couple of new worshiping communities, a new campus. It was 5 years of going from really stagnant and decline to being named one of Lifeway's fastest growing churches in America. I was tired, and so after that 5-year mark, I probably wasn't in a space where I could clearly hear God speaking, not with the audible voice, but just like through people, through books, through worship. And so my wife and I took a 3-week I won't call it a sabbatical because my mentor said that's just a long vacation. It's not a sabbatical. So we really had to, my first day of that sabbatical, again, I was just ready to kind of leave some things alone, continue my work in Sykeston, but the next season there, and got a call from West Ohio. Hey, we would like to talk to you about this again. It's like, you caught me at a vulnerable time.
I'm not sure how I feel about this.
So we actually gave ourselves that 3 weeks.
Did you put
Prayed
West
a lot.
Ohio on hold until the 3 weeks were over, or did
No,
you start the conversation?
That was probably early in the 3 weeks, and then we just started listening to people.
Got it.
We visited some churches on vacation, some churches in Memphis. We traveled there.
Yeah, I call it the Council of the Godly. And there are people in my life who serve on this council, and they don't know that they're all connected in my head.
Yeah.
But in my head, it's like this round table of like, well, I'm not going to A until I get the majority of the council's vote. And they don't know each other. They probably will never meet. But in my head, they're all there.
I like that. That's a great way to describe it. For us, it was people we didn't even know. It was just like
Oh, these are like prophetic words almost.
we were worshiping in a church in Florida on vacation, and we're like, they're checking our mail. Then we're worshiping a church in Memphis, like, ooh. And then we had some property, that we were going to build a new business on. When we had that business, it got sold. So just a lot of things.
It's just
that needed to
like
happen.
dominoes were falling in place that you clearly didn't have control over.
Yeah, it was one thing. So I would say that if you're really in a discernment period, I'm no expert at it. I don't want to pretend to be. I stumble my way through it. God seems to get my attention when that needs to happen. But I'd say, summarize that, you've got to have space to hear the voice of God. If you're always working, Andy Stanley says, if you're always working in it, you can never work on it. I think that's a good lesson for life, whether you're in ministry, whether you're in the corporate world, whether you're just in the rat race of life. If you're always working in it, you can never work on it. And so, too far in the forest to see the trees sometimes.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of retreat so that you truly can hear what God may have for you next. And we can clearly say no and ignore it, but to truly hear I do encourage people, if you've got big decisions in life, you need to give yourself space, give yourself some quietness, so that you can truly hear.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome. So then you moved to Ohio, and because I do want to hear some of your thoughts on the future of the church. You moved to Ohio to do new church development, and if I were to describe it, I've heard you say it before, creating new spaces for new faces. That's a way that we often talk about it. How has your view of church changed since stepping into the role as someone whose sole purpose is to create new spaces for new faces?
I think coming here, it was a new position.
And it hasn't really been done much around the country, right? Like, it was fairly innovative.
You think about the UMC, we have some really good traditional worship venues, traditional churches, but we don't offer a lot of alternatives to that. The alternatives would be, we went through the 90s where churches started starting contemporary services to protect the people that were there so they wouldn't leave and go to contemporary services.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got a lot of traditional churches that are having contemporary worship in it.
Not really contemporary churches.
And that's probably not the best reason to start a contemporary service, is
Sure.
to protect who's there. We want to maintain focus on those in our community. Again, I never want to lose that passion and that feeling that I had when LaCroix United Methodist was so fixated on reaching people who weren't interested in church, and they still are. They have never lost focus of that mission. So I don't ever want to lose focus of that mission. And so that's really what fuels me and drives me. And so I love doing revitalization work with Sue Nelson Kibbe and gotta give them a shout out, Grace Gerber in our department. But that's kind of my secondary role here in West Ohio. Primary role is New Church Starts. And so there was a DS, Marcus Atha, in the Columbus area. He was managing the New Church Start program while at the same time serving as the DS of one of our larger districts. This is insider language. Sorry for your faithful listeners.
He was basically doing two jobs and two really big jobs in big sprawling areas, and it had to feel like he was running in quicksand.
Yeah, and so he was an advocate. We got to get somebody in here, and they had done some. Had a consultant that come in and said, you need to focus more on new church development, because here's the facts of the matter, right? Revitalization in the business world, it might take 3 to 5 years to change a culture. You know why? Because you're paid to do that.
Right.
So you love it or you can, right? In the church world, particularly in the United Methodist Church world,
come on, preach.
It might take 5 to 7 years, but
if the pastor can survive it,
people in the pews know that they may outlast that particular pastor, and so you got to have a lot of time and a lot of money sometimes to revitalize an existing culture in the church.
Yeah, you're right.
I like to say that change is like moving a cemetery. You never get much help from the inside.
That's so good. Change is like moving a cemetery.
True for any part of the job force. So realizing that it could take 5 to 7 years to see turnaround at a church, and we need to be patient and we need to support pastors who are really trying to do that and have opportunities to do that. But if it takes 5 to 7 years, and as we mentioned earlier, 90% of churches in the U.S., according to Lifeway, all churches are in decline. So 90% are in decline. It takes 5 to 7 years to turn that 90% around. Just say 90%. If you translated that just to West Ohio.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
That would be, say, 90% here. I'm not saying that it is 90%. I'm just saying that if many of our churches needed to revitalize, it's going to take time. So while at the same time we're focusing energy and resources there, the consultant said, you've got to start some new churches, new faith communities. And so coming into West Ohio was a new position. That was a good thing, because I kind of got to help shape what that could look like. And so I learned quickly that, humbling moments were the attractional model, what I like to say, the Willow Creek model of big auditoriums.
Yeah, build it and they will come.
Let's call it Ginghamsburg model. That was kind of my style.
Sure.
It's not the only style, come to find out.
Oh my gosh.
Particularly for young people, right? Young people still like it, but not all young people. So I had to realize that my role really was to find the visionaries, the spiritual entrepreneurs, and help support their vision. And so I kind of operate with the mindset of I'm the conference church planter, and I'm here to help plant a new looking type of culture here. And so my job is to recruit the launch team, which is the first wave of church planters. We're kind of on our 3rd wave now. We call it the greenhouse. Also, Bishop asked me to help raise money a few months ago. God love him for that.
Yeah, praise God for that dynamic opportunity.
Appreciate his confidence. But it's really helped me to see my role here is I'm not asking anyone to do anything that I'm not doing myself. I'm recruiting, I'm connecting, I'm networking,
Sure.
I'm raising money, I'm helping with strategy. And so through the greenhouse, we emphasize skills such as leadership, breakthrough prayer, connecting, networking, fundraising and stewardship, and then really just building that launch plan. And so once they come out of that greenhouse, they can apply for conference funding to start a new church. The goal was to, from my perspective, to build a risk management system process so that we could really build trust. New churches, it's a new concept, it's change, it's different. It can be viewed as a threat sometimes.
Sure.
And so we have a lot of great assets in West Ohio, a lot of strong churches, a lot of great leaders. My job was really to build trust with them so that we could, I like to say, go slow now so we could go fast later. That was a leadership lesson that I had to adjust and adapt coming into a new context, an outsider in the beginning with a lot of different labels, of course, like we all have,
Yeah.
like we all give. I had to change my pace and not necessarily operate with the same urgency. But it was good for me because it was a lesson for me. We all need to be adaptable.
Yeah, so I like to run at a pretty high pace as well. And so I'm interested in that idea about slowing down. And how did you personally, not organizationally, but how did you fight? And for me, it's I'm going to use the word, it's an inner voice. This is, we need to do more and we need to go faster, which, by the way, happens in my head all the time. How do you pump the brakes on that and get to a place of, as my buddy Wayne Botkin would say, that the pace of God's grace?
How old are you?
38.
Okay. 46.
Okay.
Things do slow down naturally at that point, a little bit.
Is that is that supposed to make you feel better? I don't know.
Or you die.
Or you die.
No.
Or you die. Then you're stopped.
I will say it was God's grace. So it was just great. Who are now great friends, but what I would call good leaders here who unintentionally forced me to slow down. And so again, coming in, I thought everybody wanted to start new churches because I don't look at it as starting new churches. I look at it as evangelism. I thought everybody wanted to reach our community for Jesus and bring hope to our communities. That's really what we're doing here.
Sure.
It's just through the church, right? So, and everybody did. It's just, I've always operated with this moniker in business and even more in the church now. And it's what we talk about on day one of our greenhouse. Nothing moves faster than the speed of trust.
Wow. Say that one more time.
Nothing moves faster than the speed of trust.
There you go.
So you cannot microwave that. And so I really had to, in the church world, I think people would say that I was really effective at gathering people, large crowds, which is very important in business and in church planting, right? I needed to slow down and go a little deeper with people here when I got here, because I was born and raised in an area, everybody knew everybody, couldn't walk into a place where they didn't know me or family or something, right? I was on TV, radio, newspapers.
Sure.
Here, as you can probably relate, you left all that behind, came to a context. I didn't have that. I started over. And so I thought, I have credibility, you know. I'll just
certainly have the resume.
Let's just do things.
Right.
But again, that doesn't matter. What matters is trust and relationships. And so having some people, our cabinet, I don't want to leave anyone out, but the cabinet at the time, unintentionally, they were very supportive, but I just had to slow down and just really get to know each of them. 8 people in the cabinet, I had to spend really quality time with each of them. And they're all different, right? They're all different backgrounds, different contexts. And so it really started there. Bishop affirmed me. He hired me. Many on the conference staff, obviously, that I work with, wanted me here. But again, it was a new concept. It was entrepreneurial, and people are afraid of entrepreneurs.
Sure.
So,
okay, so that's there's a lot of questions there for me. How personally, how did you deal with a let's call it the feeling of a setback. I'm not sure it really was or not, but it, just judging off of your body language, which nobody else can see, but it felt like that must have been a humbling and kind of a gut check moment for you. Tell me, where was your faith in that moment? Did you feel like you may have overstepped moving to Ohio? I mean, was there a doubt in there? I mean, walk me through that emotionally, because I think a lot of people hit stumbling blocks and don't know what to do.
I think what we try to teach our kids is one of the most important things that you'll need to learn how to do in life later on is to be adaptable.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to hit roadblocks, you're going to hit speed bumps, and that's an understatement. I mean, many people we know suffer from terminal illness, right? And
of course.
Just maybe, I think, keeping it in perspective, people like us, don't know you as well as I'd like to, but we can read people.
Yeah.
People like us, and one of my mentors, Jeff Posgate, he said, Brad, you're oftentimes going to be out here, and the people that you work with or lead, they're not going to see it yet, and it's going to frustrate you if you don't change. So you've got to figure out a way to meet people where they are and bring people along.
Yeah, my mentor says that it's not really leading if there's no one following. You're just
perfect. Yeah,
being loud.
Yeah,
which I have a gift for.
Well, so that's great. Great image. So I think, was it frustrating? Again, it wasn't in the grand scheme of things. It's not like we weren't getting a no. It was just like I realized early on that I had to slow down and build trust. And that's the theme of life now, isn't it? We have to be authentic. We have to build relationships. And I shared with our greenhouse just this morning in a little Facebook group, could it be that relationships are the greatest assets in life?
Oh,
and
sure.
That's not financial. You can pick up a phone yesterday. I don't know when you're airing this, but we were recently at New City Church in Dayton. Chris said, I'm trying to raise money to put in a full-length basketball court for the neighborhood kids. Before I knew it, and our lesson that day was fundraising and stewardship and sustainability in new ministries. And before I knew it, some of the greenhouse participants had their phones out, calling or texting and trying to raise money. And so relationships, it's all about relationships. And so was it frustrated? Was I questioning our move? I would say no, I wasn't to that extent. I had to be adaptable. I had to.
Yeah.
This is adaptable leadership. What's the world we live in right now, particularly in the United Methodist Church?
Sure.
It's not a technical, linear approach to things anymore. It's adaptable, and so we have to be adaptable. We don't have to be, and many aren't. But I'm choosing to build trust, meet people where they are. I'm here to serve you, Tony. I'm here to serve cabinet. I'm here to serve the bishop. I'm not here to tell you how to plant a church. Really, I'm here to support your vision for reaching new people through a new faith community. So I can tell you what I know, but I don't want to hijack the vision that God has given you, really. So
wow, that's
going on a rabbit trail.
No, it's a good rabbit trail. And you know what? It's important because I think that whether you're in the church world or not, I think that there's a lack of adaptability in our culture. And as a result, we get to a place where I have to be, if you're right, then I have to be wrong, or vice versa. When the reality is we can both be right differently. We can both be right differently. And I think that's true in reaching people for the kingdom. I think that's true in business. I think that's true in everything that we do. There's opportunities for both of us to be right.
Yeah, that's a good, well stated. I mean, again, this season of life for me, I'm here to serve all the people in West Ohio. And so how can I come alongside them, you, to support you in being fruitful in your ministry to reach your community? I'm not compromising the mission to make disciples of Jesus, to reach people like I was.
Right.
It's going to look different, but I never want to lose focus on the mission. I like to use the image of the cruise ship versus the battleship.
Yeah.
We need to be focused on the goal. Like you're a military person, you have a mission. I'm certainly not here to promote war, always peace over war.
Amen.
But there is a military, and there are battles, and when you do have that, you have a mission, and you're probably not going to relent until the mission is accomplished. I think in the church we have a greater mission that Jesus has given us, and again, it's life-changing. It has been for me, and so I always encourage our churches, existing churches. I love cruise ships. I love going on cruises. They're awesome. You know why? Because when I walk on that cruise ship, life becomes all about me.
Right.
My preferences, my tastes, my wants, my desires.
Man.
You thought I was talking about a church, didn't you?
That'll preach. That'll preach.
No, I mean, as Bishop says, there are no bad people, but and it's not anyone's fault. But we do have, in our country, we have churches that are based on preferences, and we've enabled that as leaders.
Well, certainly. I would say that for an entire generation, we spent so much time getting people to church that we forgot to teach them how to follow Jesus. And following Jesus looks way different than just going to church. And what I love about your approach is I really believe that you're trying to find passionate visionaries who are passionate not about building buildings or even building communities, but passionate about building Jesus followers. And that, it's funny because Jesus says, follow me. And there's no ever indication that Jesus stops moving. So we don't stop moving. We got to keep moving.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask you before time's up, trends that you're seeing in the church world and how people are connecting with faith. Because there are families listening and people are like, man, I'm not sure Sunday morning fits for me anymore. I'm not sure Saturday evening fits. I'm not sure. What are the trends that you see? I love trends. I love trying to be on the front end of trends.
Do you read Barna Trends?
I do.
Okay.
I do sometimes. I haven't seen this year's yet.
Yeah.
But what are you seeing? What are you seeing out there?
Well, I can only. I don't want to speculate on fantasy. I want to speculate on fruit. And so, just right here in Ohio,
come on,
alone, I can share with you the 8 new faith communities that we've started in the last 2 years now, probably. They're all different. We have what you would call, this is going to be insider language for some, but it is what it is. It's called Dinner Church up in Toledo.
Yeah.
And the pastor Steve North, who had a really creative vision to, he's been doing this for years, but it was really out of the box. But now we are acknowledging it, so to speak. That sounds bad, but we are affirming that this guy's really leading a change. And so it's a dinner church. It meets once a month. 200 to 400 people come to his house, break bread together, worship, have church. These people probably might not be interested in the Sunday morning experience. The average worship in America now is slightly under 2 times a month. And so I said when I came, the first person that wants to start a new church that meets once a month, they're probably going to be onto something, right?
Right.
So that's one that I think is really, I think all churches are attractional. I've heard the attractional missional. I don't agree with that because we're all attracted to church for some reason, whether it's sanctuary, whether it's 150-year-old building, whether it's Sunday school, whether it's dinner church. It's just that some are more attractive than others.
Gotcha. I got you.
So that's one that wouldn't be your standard model. The one up on the state line of Toledo, Farmhouse Sabbath is what it's called. Similar situation, very rural. They meet out in the middle of nowhere.
They mean in an actual farmhouse,
people,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's tapped into a need there to be in community together. And so they are launching their new barn here in about a month, I think. That's going to be a fully functioning faith community. We have one in the Columbus area that would be more the attractional model, Sunday morning worship, Central City Church.
Yeah.
It's creative because it was launched out of Athens, which is in a totally different district. And then, of course, we have Mosaic in Dayton, which was a partnership between Christ Kettering and Williamsburg. Started out in the movie theater, doing very well, definitely beyond critical mass. So that trend is still holding true.
What do you
leave some out.
but what do you think's next?
Well, I
So,
will
like-
say let me just share the 4 common characteristics that we're seeing in growing churches around America, all denominations. Quality at every level, quality across the board. Like when I came in here, emphasizing quality. Young people, especially, are really into loyalty around brands, and they see brands as taking pride in quality. So quality at every level. You look at some of the fast-growing churches we have just in Ohio, it's quality, right? Whether it's worship, hospitality, small group gatherings, promotional things. So quality, authentic community. We see a lot of our larger churches, not just UMC, but we see a lot of our larger churches just exploding with young people. With the attractional model, smoke and lights, they're flocking these churches because they're finding authentic community. What they're also finding is diversity. That word has a lot of different meanings today, I know, but when they walk into these growing churches, they see people that they work with and relate to the other 6 days of the week. So when they walk into these churches, it's like the real world to them. And they're also, the 4th trend is people are looking for a place to make a difference. And so,
Love that.
Church Without Walls, is it your hashtag?
That's our hashtag, yeah.
So it looks like you're doing a lot of these things well. It's no wonder that you're blowing up here.
Well, I don't know about that. We're having fun. God's doing a lot of cool stuff.
It's all about leadership.
Well, we're very thankful to have some incredible leaders around us here at Restoration. So, okay, so the last question I always like to ask people, and I'm really appreciative of your time today. I know that you're super busy.
It's really my pleasure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The last question I always like to ask people is if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, maybe right after you and Ann get married, before you about to go on this huge journey with your business and your faith and all this stuff, what's the one piece of advice that you would give yourself in hindsight?
I would say hold most things in life loosely, but hold Jesus tightly.
Okay.
I mean, that's not family or anything like that. That's just our beliefs, our opinions. Paul says, follow me as I follow Jesus, but no further. And so I would say, throughout my life, I've always tried to find common ground with people. But here at 46, being on a journey, still going on that journey, you realize some of those conversations or arguments or debates that we have, as we're having now, they're not that important at the end of the day. It's about the relationships that you have with people. If you don't have the relationships or trust, people are going to check out, right? If you have the trust, I could probably say things to you that I couldn't say otherwise. But so that would be, I think, one thing. I mean, that's a tough question.
Well,
Other people, you should have given me that ahead of time. I mean,
you know what? It's good to get the natural reaction. You did a great job. I think that's a great answer. So I hold stuff loosely, hold Jesus tightly. That'll preach any day of the week.
Okay.
That'll preach any day of the week. So I'm gonna do something I don't normally do, but I'm gonna ask you if there is a way that our listeners can be praying for what God's doing through West Ohio and New Church Development. Are there specific things that we can pray for? Do you have one or two things that anybody who's listening at the end of this conversation can pray for specifically?
So you don't have time for my list of 12? I'm just kidding.
Well, we can put them in the show notes.
I would say, thank you for asking. I would say that God would just continue to raise up leaders with a vision. I think leaders with a vision can change the world.
Amen.
They can do anything. If you don't have vision, though, it's going to be challenging. And so help us continue to cultivate to raise up, identify, cultivate leaders with a vision. And then also, as I mentioned, I'm helping Bishop Palmer raise money for it. And so, just continue to, I would say, ignite the heart and passion of people who truly want to see lives transformed through these new faith communities, like you've heard some of the stories, so that we can continue to resource them. We're about over halfway to our campaign here, and we've been very blessed. It's only by the grace of God that people have given what they've given, and so we just want to continue to be able to support these startups. It really is like a startup business. And
Yeah.
So we have a clear vision. We want to support it, and so we don't want to have any limitations on that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So
Okay, so if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
What's your handle?
Brad Aycock.
Brad Aycock.
I have reached my limits on Facebook, but
It's time to launch a page, bro. It's time to launch a page.
Nothing against that. I'm just not.
You're not there. You're not there. It's okay.
But it's Instagram, Brad Aycock, Twitter, Brad Aycock, and then
And we'll link to all that in the show notes, and that'll be great. And then
email if you know a leader out there, the spiritual entrepreneur who has a heart to reach their community and is called to do it through the church. We would love to talk to them about maybe starting a new faith community. We have our greenhouse recruitment tour stops around the conference, and so that's a day full of just interviewing people who may have a dream, a vision that God has given them, and they want to share it with us, and we want to see how we can best support you. And one of those options may be going into our greenhouse program. As I mentioned, helps shape the vision a little bit more clear, figure out the risk, and what it would take to come alongside you.
love it.
So I can get you those dates if you want to post them.
Yeah, we can post them in the notes, and then we can also we'll link to the online giving portal. If you feel called to support future church plants, we would love to help facilitate that for you. Anybody who's listening, a tremendous opportunity to share the gospel. And Brad, thank you so much for taking the time today and for sharing your story and how God's using you. And I'm just excited to see what God continues to do through your gifts and graces. So.
Just pray that I'll stay out of the way of it.
Amen.
Let God do what God does. Thank you for what you're doing here
You're welcome.
at the church and also with the podcast. It's awesome.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in today to my conversation with Brad. I hope that you find everything that we talked about today life-giving and inspiring to you. I know for me, one of the things that I'll take away is Brad's relentless pursuit of hearing God's voice. What a gift and a reminder that is for so many of us. So no matter where you are on your individual journey, take some time to listen to God. Take Brad's advice. Really sort it out. Also, if you could do us a favor and share this episode, maybe jump into the conversation, give Brad a follow, tell him how much you appreciated him being on the show. I know he would love that. I would love that as well. So good to connect with friends. Can't wait to share with you upcoming episode on urban ministry from my dear friend Pastor Corey Cunningham. That and so much more. The best way to make sure you don't miss an episode is to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, I'll see you guys real soon.